One.
Awkward sibling hug?
Awkward sibling hug. Pat, pat.
Hello, and welcome to
Hello.
That's what I'm saying!
Hi, and welcome to the 5th episode of Awkward Sibling Hug. I'm your host, Phineas.
And I'm your other host, Sarah.
Ooh, and we just watched
the Inconveniencing.
the 5th episode of Gravity Falls, which is honestly
Very good episode.
the funniest episode yet. I think the two of us laughed more at the Stan bits in this episode than we have the entire rest of the show. Like it
was just so good. It's just such a perfect gag in between.
Yeah.
I just watching Stan get progressively more and more like he starts off being so off-put by this like girly melodrama on the TV, and then he just keeps getting more into it, and then he's just like, it's
yeah. No, I mean, like, and it's so accurate because I feel like that's how we feel about a lot of the shows. Because, like, Gravity Falls is not a melodrama, but a lot of, like, popular shows wind up being melodramas. And I feel like that's, like, a big thing about how getting sucked into them, right, works and stuff. But it's, like, I think it's really interesting because it's, like, if you've only seen the show once over, it's just going to be a really funny segment. But I actually feel like the minute you've seen the show another time over, right, you get a lot more out of his whole, well, I forget what his line was within it, but like how he just like related so much to like one of the scenes from the show. Oh my gosh, it's so sweet. It's really interesting to see.
It's just like my life, in a way.
And it's funny because once you really get down to business and defeat the Huns about how Stan's like parent relationship is, it makes a lot more sense, I feel like, honestly.
Yeah, very interesting bit of foreshadowing. And I'm still on the fence about whether or not that was on purpose. I wouldn't be surprised if they just thought that was really funny.
I wouldn't be surprised either way, but like it was very funny. I think that's like I think this episode actually like has every character used so well, I feel like, because it's like Gravity Falls kind of has a Wendy problem. I think a lot of people have gone into it. I don't know if you agree with me necessarily, but I feel like Wendy gets so little to do compared to the rest of the main cast. And The Inconveniencing is one of the first episodes that really breaks away from that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I've read a lot about how behind the scenes they kind of really struggle to get a good grasp of the character. The entire premise behind Wendy is like she's set up to be a girl. She's like the embodiment of the cool teenage girl that is just like so much cooler than you. And she's kind of there to be like that cooler older teenage girl that Dipper has a crush on.
Yeah.
And they just had a really hard time, I think, getting a whole character because, I mean, at the end of the day, that's her purpose, is to be like the coolest person you know. And so it's just
your mic's
I think it's hard to shift from. Oh, sorry.
All good. Not your fault. Sorry guys.
But yeah. I think the show definitely sees Wendy through Dipper's eyes, and Dipper sees her as like perfect person, and so it doesn't leave a lot of room for a very dynamic.
I think the thing too though is she's not a bad character. I think there's a lot of episodes that give her enough development and stuff for her to work. She's a minimally fleshed out member of the main cast, but it feels like she's much more of, I'm not gonna lie, like a pretty well developed recurring character, if that makes sense. Like the fact that she's in the intro, and when you compare it to each of the other characters, where you kind of like get to know where they're going. Like Dipper and Mabel have a lot of development because of the two leads. Stan and Stan also get a lot of development because they're Stan. Yes, they are Stan. And then Suze, I feel like gets a lot of stuff to do within like over time and really develops as a character. Leaving Wendy as just the odd one out, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very. Yeah, she never really steps outside of fear of being Bruce Rush. Like it really does just encompass what she does on. And you can tell, like, I'm sure there's an alternate universe somewhere, some part of Gravity Falls that we as audience members don't get. Or, like, Wendy is doing really interesting stuff and being a really interesting person, having like flaws. You know, the sorts of things that make a person compelling.
No,
but we just never get to see it.
I mean, like, I feel like they couldn't hold their own show, but like Wendy's group of friends could hold their own adventure with their own group dynamic and stuff, where they feel like,
oh my god, yeah.
Teenagers, like, I'm not gonna lie, the only other character that really like matters in her friend group is Robbie, played by Redacted, who
The only reason they expand on him really is because he kind of becomes, and they sort of, because they're like competing for affection.
I forget. Do Wendy and Robbie ever date?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, I think that might be a little bit of a spoiler coming up. Like, start dating. Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm not gonna spoil it, but yeah, that's the thing.
I think I remember it happening, but it's like I barely remember it happening. Like when I think of Gravity Falls, I think of the mini major characters, like the recurring characters who get a lot to do within things. So this is your Robbies, these are your Pacificas. I guess you could kind of count McGucket into this category of like a mini major character. And then like Mabel's friends, I guess too. I don't know, like the ones who kind of recur and are around the plot. Oh yeah, Bill, Gideon, also just like more adult side characters. I think Robbie is the weakest one, and that's like I never really like him as a person. But that's my intent. I'm pretty sure.
You're not supposed to.
No.
Yeah, he's supposed to be just like that annoying, like overly cynical and moody teenager.
He's the embodiment of everything.
He's supposed to be kind of obnoxious.
He is the embodiment of every failing of toxic masculinity in teenage boys. Sort of, I guess.
He's just got that, like, he's edgy, and he's trying so hard to be edgy.
Well, the fact that he's, like, punching down on this child, like, huh?
Right? Like, buddy. Right. It's so sad. Oh my god. Like, that's... Yeah, I think that really goes to show just how, like, insecure Robbie is as a character.
So,
which,
yeah.
I feel like we haven't mentioned this, but this is Robbie's first episode as well. Like, for the whole teen friend group.
And
they do show up a lot throughout the show.
Do they though? Like I think of this episode and I think of the Love God, and that's it I think of for them. Robbie shows up more often, but like I feel like Wendy's friend group is criminally like underused as characters. They don't really need to be, but like or not criminally underused, much more of like they're underdeveloped and much more flat characters within the grand pool, setting up one part of the Gravity Falls world that we'd never get to see.
Yeah. Which I understand. They're a funny. It's a really funny dynamic that they have. They did such a good job of writing. Like I see these characters on screen and I immediately feel like I'm back in high school. Like this is absolutely what it's like to be a teenager in a like tiny dead end town where you have nothing to do.
Right. No.
And this is
absolutely
sort of shenanigans that teens in small towns get up to. It's just like. Yeah,
and
it's very good.
I think
very fun.
I think the episode's really good within that regard and stuff. Because the Inconveniencing, make no mistake, is my favorite episode of this show so far. It's okay. Now here's a fun little thing. So in this episode, right? So Dipper and Mabel, in order to hang out with Wendy, trick her into thinking that they're 13. I am of the theory that I feel like Wendy already knew, but was just chill and is like the best older sister type like character in the world.
Yeah, and because she is a really chill person, like whether she knew or not, I don't think she really cared what age they were. You know, she didn't care whether they were 12. She likes Dipper and Mabel because they're good people. They're good kids. You know, and she likes them, and it doesn't really matter to her, I don't think.
And oddly enough, we never see her have that relationship much with her actual siblings who actually exist in this show. Because, if I'm not mistaken, right, Manly Dan's her dad, right?
Yeah, which I think I remember, don't quote me on this, but I think I remember reading somewhere that when they did, because Manly Dan is introduced in episode 2, right? And he just kind of has like a gag. Yeah. Where he's like beating up a fish
as one does.
In his boat, and then his sons are like sitting in the boat. I think there's like 3 of them. Yeah. And apparently, originally they weren't intending for that to be like Wendy's family.
But when 2 redheads emerge in a show, you gotta put them together.
Yeah, and then everybody just immediately assumed, oh, Manly Dan. That's Wendy's dad because he's redheaded and he has 3 redheaded sons. It's like, sure. And they just went along with it. I think I might be. It's been a while.
So no, and getting more into the episode, right? I feel like the whole part. I think this one does really well at like just giving these characters more to do. This is definitely like more of a Dipper episode than like a Mabel episode. As The Hand That Rocks the Mabel was like a Mabel episode, they do a pretty good job of like at least alternating who it feels like is the main twin for the day. Like Dipper seems to be the de facto protagonist, but I feel like Mabel gets a lot of spotlight. And in this one, she's used for her pure potential for jokes, with the whole Fun Dip thing being one of the funniest jokes constructed for this show. I actually think that
Mabel is in full silly mode. This entire episode, so great. It's so good. I'm here for it.
I think for me, the contrast between the 2 twins socially and stuff is really great to see always. Because I've always connected Mabel a lot, right? Because I am that kind of person where it's much more on the impulsive side. Did we talk about on the podcast the whole ADHD thing that we both thought of yet?
Sure. I don't think we have.
So we both of the Pine twins have ADHD. I had canon, right? As an ADHDer, right? And then Mabel's is much more of the hyperactivity side of the whole equation, and Dipper's is a lot more of
like hyper focus.
Yeah.
And that sort of
It's a boot.
I think
Yeah. Huh?
I definitely see it a lot more with Mabel, and I go back and forth, to be honest.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Theory.
He
doesn't have a hyperactivity, but he also doesn't have the inattentions. Like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure which type he would be.
I just think it's a fun, like, little thing to think about and stuff within that. Mabel definitely has it though. I feel so seen by her character in a lot of these things. And it's funny because I feel like Mabel wound up playing the blueprint to so many other characters that kind of like the whole lead of these like perky female leads and stuff, right? We've seen so many of them emerge in these shows past her. Like Disney frequently has like, I never watched it, but they have like Star vs. the Forces of Evil, I heard, which is a can of worms from what I've heard. And then also The Owl House.
I used to watch it back in the day. But yeah, I really liked Star vs.
I watched like
at least
one
the first
or two
couple
episodes.
seasons were pretty good.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, I think it was definitely like at the time it was kind of that type of female character, and then I think it definitely blew up a lot more as Gravity Falls went on.
Yeah, no, I think absolutely.
I think Mabel is definitely one of the like. She's one of those characters that, at least for me, always comes with that like. You know, that like how do I put it?
I get that. I think
just like that bright, vivacious girl.
Well, I think the trope for it is the Genkai girl on TV tropes. I'm a TV tropes addict. I use it like Dipper used the Journal 3, I'm not gonna lie. And I think within that, it's really interesting seeing this like sort of boom and tying it to this show. And yeah, but also, okay, so back to the episode more so. I love the convenience store as the set piece.
I know. I love the idea that they, these teenagers driving around in this one guy's like shitty van.
Oh yeah.
And then they just drive to a convenience store that is local legend that it's haunted by the store owners who died inside this. And just the idea that
and the way that they died is the funniest thing.
Like, oh, we're not scared.
I think the way that they died is the funniest thing ever. The store owners.
Oh my god, that was so funny. Yeah.
Homework sucks and don't tuck in your shirt or something.
So are rules. Tucking in. It was homework's whack, and so are rules. Tucking in your shirts for fool, which is the silliest.
It's awesome.
It's such a Disneyfied, like snarkily Disneyfied version of like a rap. And it's funny because it's absolutely these two elderly people who hate teenagers and hate their disrespectful ways. This is absolute what they heard.
I think
whatever that song was, those were the words they heard.
I think once you see, right, once you notice the whole standards and practices email, you know that it's the creators of Gravity Falls snarking on Disney and Disneyfying everything, right? Because I feel but it's like dude, the fact that the two characters had like heart attacks and it's like mentioned on screen and stuff as how they died is still like, how did they get that across the censors? Like, I feel like that's something that Disney would have like wiggled their fingers at and been like, no, death on screen, no.
See, that's the weird thing though, is that it's like, I feel like the general like death and violence, when it comes to like censorship, quote unquote, and like trying to make things child friendly, it always leans more towards like language and like sexual insinuations more than it does like the censors don't seem to they don't seem to care quite as much about violence, which I find really interesting. That's a very like, okay, we need to have a conversation about priorities, about like what you're genuinely concerned about with kids, about what's appropriate and what isn't. Like I think this might be about something else, because I don't know.
Oh yeah, no,
that's always been weird to me.
Absolutely, I get that. But yeah,
it's very the premise of these like two elderly people die from shock because the teens of the town are being so disrespectful with their untucked shirts and their rap music. It's such a funny.
It is.
It's just so good. And now they're haunting this convenience store, and then teenagers break in. And the only way to calm them down and to get them to like just chill out and let them go is for Dipper to admit that like, I'm not actually a teenager, so that they talk to him.
I think it's fun. And then bam, the Lammy dance.
The Lammy dance, the iconic Lammy dance.
I actually think for early Gravity Falls, the Lammy dance is such a big part of its iconography, and Dipper and the Lamb suit, like that is what I'm using for the thumbnail for this episode. It's very iconic.
There's so many good bits. There's a lot of iconic come out of this episode, like Mabel with her fun dip and her hallucinations.
Oh yeah,
with the fun dip is just iconic. Everybody loves the fun dip bit. Like it's one of those.
I love it. It's such a good show, and I'm happy to watch.
I never used to. I'm so glad that we're doing watches, because there's definitely, I didn't always understand the hype around the show. It's just
you're cutting out a little
liked
bit.
It was good. God, I don't know what's wrong with my microphone. Sorry.
No worries, you're all good.
But anyway,
I mean, there's a benefit of this podcast being
I definitely
mostly
didn't
unscripted.
Yeah, we can futz around with stuff.
Yeah,
I did not previously understand the hype for this episode, and I am so glad we rewatched it because I get it now. I see the vision. I understand why everybody loves it so much. There's so many iconic moments. The funniest jokes in this episode are so funny. They're so good. Like I was just cracking up. Like it's great. It's good. I want to rewatch it already.
Yeah, no,
it's just so fun. And Gravity Falls doing Ghosts, it just makes so much sense. It's like, yeah, we needed to get around to this. We needed to get real darn spooky.
For the first time, though, like they'll do Ghosts plenty more times. Like the thing with Gravity Falls.
Oh goodness knows that.
There's a lot of topics that they revisit, and I believe Ghosts is one of the ones that they play with a little more often. Like, this show's really great at building things back up and stuff, so you know more, and this one's just a great bit of world building, and yeah, I can't say too much more. I just really like this episode. It's very funny. The characters work really well in this Dipper Wendy narrative, where each of the other characters play a good second fill to everything, and yeah, it's all right.
And then all of that intercut with the great bit with Stan, it just brings.
Stan's runner there is one of the funniest things higher so far. Kids.
Oh, I'm gonna be thinking about that.
It's lovely. It's
good.
I think this show uses TV so well.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No worries.
But I was about to.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was about to go into Sarah's fun fact corner, which I almost didn't have anything prepared this week.
Oh.
But I have a fun fact.
All right, I'm ready for it.
Right in the nick of time. So apparently, this is, I think, if you're like a really well integrated Gravity Falls fan, there's a good chance you might already know. But for those who don't, when Mabel is high on Fun Dip and she's having one of her hallucinations, there's that part, right, where there's this like weird dolphin creature with like fists, right?
Yeah.
And she, what does she say? She
Onwards,
says
Hiroshima.
The future is in the past. Onwards, Aoshima, and then the fists start barfing rainbows, and then and then she just flies off. So funny, so iconic.
Maybe we'll be tripping for real, though.
As some people may know, Aoshima is actually the name of John Aoshima. That is where Aoshima comes from. And it's so funny because Onwards Aoshima kind of became a meme with Gravity Falls fans, and it's really, that's just the name of a guy. That's just a guy. That's just
awesome.
A guy's name. That's just a director. Which is really funny, because John Aoshima actually didn't work on this episode at all.
So
I guess everybody who did work on it just really liked him.
Aw, good for him.
But yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you for the fun fact.
I enjoy that.
I enjoy that fact as well. But anyways, thank you for tuning into this episode's Awkward Sibling Hug.
Yes, thank you for being here. Thank you.
I think that's what we have to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also
a really great episode. If you're listening to this and for some reason you haven't watched it yet, go watch it. It's hilarious and great.
Abso-hecking-lutely. Alright. Well, with that said, goodbye, my friends. Goodbye!
Bye. See you next week.
Yes.
Awkward sibling hug?
Awkward sibling hug. Pat, pat.